The boys, here comes a candle to light you to bed. Okay, so first of all, this episode, I won't say that, a lot of things weren't happening in this episode, but I'll just say that this episode, compared to the Herogasm episode, wasn't as intense or as crazy, but it was more of a quieter episode compared to the previous episode. And I have to also say, quite an emotional episode too, which I'm going to talk about in this review. So, without any further ado, let's get started. First thing first, we got our biggest revelation, which was Maeve is still alive. Okay, that's great. But it seems like, from where it seems like after the conversation, I think Homelander is just keeping her alive out of self-interest, given that he said that he wants to harvest her eggs so that he can mainly, produce an even more powerful suit, probably the most powerful suit there is, given that, we already have Ryan, who's like the, biological son of him and Becca, Butcher's wife. But then, I'm pretty sure, if Maeve and Homelander have a kid, obviously, that kid is probably going to be more powerful than Ryan. So I guess that's Homelander's plan with Maeve. So we're gonna see, what happens with that. But let's talk about the biggest and, well, I wouldn't say the most, but it comes quite close to being the most emotional scene, and that is Noir finding his way back. And the main purpose of this scene was for us to like learn that why, Noir is. I'll just say that he is kind of afraid of Soldier Boy. As powerful he is, he's still afraid of Soldier Boy. I think we can certainly say that for sure. He's just afraid to face against Soldier Boy. Nonetheless, as we know, after all those imaginary animals, talking to him, they did like try to give him motivation to go back and face against Soldier Boy, which we're gonna find out, how that happens. But the main point is, I have to say that Noir's hallucination by talking to those imaginary animals and the imaginary animated animals was quite creative. I think it does really make sense, as he did, have a brain damage, and like we saw in the flashback, because Soldier Boy basically, brutally, injured him, and I think ripped off half of his brain through that process. And that's why, he hallucinates the way he was, and he can't even talk to start with, and his face is also like, just disfigured, which is also one of the reason why he wears a mask. And after going through watching that whole sequence of all those animated animals playing out that scene, I have to say that it was certainly it certainly helped us, I would say, to sympathize with him more, given how he got bullied by Soldier Boy, and that also certainly justified why they wanted to get rid of him, especially when Stan Edgar explains to him that he's replacing him with an even more powerful suit who can even fly, and that's not other than Homelander. So it makes perfect sense, why they try to get rid of Soldier Boy. They had all the reasons to get rid of Soldier Boy. And let's talk about this scene. I'll just try to get through the scene a bit quickly. And that is the scene where Annie tricks Homelander, which was quite brave and smart of her, because obviously, it's not like she can beat him with her superpowers, but she does use her brain and tries to find out a way to trap Homelander. And honestly, after watching this scene, despite how intense it kind of got when Homelander was just standing right in front of her and kind of like mad at her, honestly, I wasn't really intimidated by Homelander in the scene, especially because Annie herself said it, how little he is on the inside. Well, he doesn't call him little; she calls him small. But basically, it means the same thing. That Homelander, as powerful he seems on the outside, on the inside, he's not really much. He doesn't amount to much. And it was also quite smart to see her, record everything Homelander said about that night when he kills Alex and what he would do with Huey. That way, all her followers, Annie's followers, would be hearing everything Homelander said, and that way Homelander couldn't take any step further. Let's see how that pans out in the next episode. Who knows? This might be a quite, this might be a build up to something big in the next episode, which we'll find out next week. And let's talk about Soldier Boy's PTSD. Like throughout that whole forest while they were walking, like there's a scene, or there were a couple of scenes, when Soldier Boy would keep turning back and say, "What did you say? What did you say?" to Butcher and Huey. Even the Butcher wouldn't, and Huey weren't saying anything about him. So I think that PTSD really, is really stuck to him, and it's really impacting him, with his actions. It's clearly visible with his actions. The way he just gets really aggressive, and well, there was this particular scene, as we remember, when where he brutally murders Mindstorm. I think it's all because of everything he has gone through, and I don't think he can get rid of it anytime soon. I think his PTSD is certainly gonna, lead him to, harming a lot of people in future episodes, especially after the big revelation towards the end, which I'm gonna talk about in a while. But let's talk about the most emotional scene. I'm pretty sure it's hard to disagree that this is probably the most emotional scene when, Mindstorm, makes Butcher, go through everything, he had been through as a child. He basically has to revisit his past and has to experience the entire process of his brother dying, which was not only hard for him to watch, I'm pretty sure, quite hard for many of us to watch as well. Nonetheless, we still got to know, why Butcher is the way he is today. And why he blames himself for his brother's death and definitely had a bad relationship with his father, all because because of his abusive father and Butcher leaving his brother behind. His brother took his life, and certainly it was emotional for Butcher to watch and for us to watch. I don't know what to say about the scene. This scene was certainly quite emotional, if not the most emotional scene throughout the series. Now let's talk about Kimiko getting her powers back. Well, I did say that I wanted to see her like live a new life without her powers, and how she tries to manage her life without her powers. But I'll say that this time when she gets her powers back, she gets it in a more satisfying way, given that she genuinely wants to like protect her family mainly being Frenchie. And this time she also chose to get her powers rather than being forced to, and that too for a good cause. So watching her get her powers back, even though she had to go back to her old roots, it certainly was more satisfying to see her go back to her old roots by getting her powers back. And my final point, which was certainly a big revelation to all of us, and that was, Homelander Soldier Boy's son. So that's interesting because not only is Ryan now a biological suit, but Homelander's as well, given that he's the son of Soldier Boy. And it's also that reaction I have to say when Soldier Boy tells him what father wouldn't give his position to his son, or say something like that, and then you have Homelander's reaction, that face of it right here, that certainly said everything. And I'm pretty sure that's going to lead to a huge father and son unification in the next and final episode of this season. So in a way, I'm trying to say that this one episode, even though it wasn't like the most intense episode, it certainly helped build up a lot of things for the next episode, which is the final episode. And for that reason, I have to say, in that sense, this episode had a lot of things going, while it's not being as crazy or intense as, let's say, the Hero Gasm episode. So certainly helps build up the hype for the next episode, which comes out next week. Therefore, until next week, see you next week.